America.
It's that time. Your fix is here. College football is a year-round discussion with these two. Here's JC and Morgan. Mike Morgan of ESPN and JC Shurburtt of 24/7 Sports have you covered. Beginning right now.
It is the final day of July 2024, which means we are exactly 1 month away from week 1 of college football, less than that from week 0 of college football. And for that matter, if you include the Hall of Fame game tomorrow and exhibition football in the NFL, you don't have another week without football until late February. Let that sink in for a moment. You don't have another week of no football until late February. Rejoice. Let it all sink in. Of course, we are with you even when there is no football, or at least no football games. This is episode number 248 of JC and Morgan. He is JC Shurburtt of 24/7 Sports. Our producer is Mad Dog Phil Mullinax. You don't see him, but trust me, he's working hard. He's a handsome man, and he's a pillar of the community. I am merely Mike Morgan, and we're glad to join you once again. Number 248 if you're scoring at home, and we'll be mounting up several more. The offseason does provide us the privilege of having some more guests on. We have never had JBoy, Jacob Crain, on of Crain and Company. We've both been on Jacob's show a number of times, particularly before he kind of joined forces with a national network and so on and so forth. So we've all known each other for a while. We just haven't had him on this particular program from a scheduling standpoint. So we're going to change that today. Jacob is a huge college football guy and covers it nationally and like us, talks about it year round. So we look forward to having Jacob on later on today. We'll have the JC5. We'll have a number of things covering what's been going on in a busy week since we've been on the air last time with Phil Steele. I mean, I'm just looking at through, and I don't know what JC you have up on the JC5. I kind of like that. I kind of like the being caught off guard. You just kind of like, it's a punch. It's like a Mike Tyson uppercut in the late 80s. You don't see it coming. And sometimes it knocks me out. Sometimes I'm not ready for it. Sometimes I am. But I like the element of surprise there. But I'm just looking through and I'm counting what's gone on the last week since we were on. I think it broke right around the time we were on the air last week. 105 roster spots now in college football. You could technically give 105 full rides as opposed to 85. There's a number of ways to look at this. Some coaches like it, some don't. What is the true impact? I have some thoughts on that. It's official that the allotment is going to be between $20 and $22 million now that schools will have on their payroll to pay college athletes. That's expected to grow, by the way, to about $33 million as TV revenues grow. We still don't know Title IX, how that's going to be divvied up sport by sport. Auburn is crushing it in recruiting. JC, I know you're all over that. From a national recruiting standpoint, you've got everything from Sonny Dykes adding Dana Holgerson. I was thinking about Dana Holgerson, who I last saw doing a Houston game a few years ago. It was Andre Ware and I, and Dana had just gotten the job at Houston and was expected to just roll with that program. And the mighty mullet, it never took. It never worked out there. But he's now on the Sonny Dykes staff at TCU. We've got a potential Michigan bowl ban looming overhead, and another Georgia player gets in trouble, this time Ra Thomas. And this is just more than a speeding violation. This is a whole other different thing, which always invites the question of, okay, well, what's the quote-unquote culture of the program? Our partner in crime, Josh Pate, got into it on that with some Georgia fans. But with all that being said, I say to you, JC, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Yeah. 105-man roster limit. No, sir, I don't like it. It's a exercise in futility to think in college football that the various conferences and programs will kind of police themselves with it. What's going to happen is you'll have the SEC, in my opinion, make a good faith effort to preserve walk-ons. Okay, they're probably going to sit down with their coaches and say, all right, in our conference, you're going to give 90 scholarships because you don't have to give 105, and then 15 walk-ons, right? And that's fair. Well, then Arizona State and Colorado and Baylor and the Big 12 and the ACC, they're going to go, aha, we can get an advantage here because we'll sign 105. And then there's some schools within the ACC that I think they'll probably sign like 60 scholarships. It's going to be interesting. So what that's going to do is, because nobody's going to do anything to hurt their program, is you're just going to end up giving, 20 more scholarships. The walk-ons are going to be froze out, unfortunately. And that's not college football. I think that's a bad decision to say, and I know what they're trying to do. You're going to get to the point sometimes with NIL, and that's a different subject on the JC5 we're going to talk about, where a rev share or whatever, where you're going to be able to go and say, all right, you don't get a scholarship, but you get this much money, and you don't count against our 85, but so I understand the roster limit part of it, but you could have limited the roster without making it all full scholarships. And I know the value of those has gone down. It shouldn't, because 98% of the players that play in college football don't make the NFL. So you probably should like that you have a scholarship. But I just don't like it because I'm really fundamentally against anything that denies opportunity. And there's so many great walk-on stories. I mean, like I've mentioned it many times, Hunter Renfrow caught the win. Two walk-ons directly impacted who won the national championship in the last 10 years. Hunter Renfrow at Clemson, game-winning touchdown pass and catch. And our boy Thurston Howell the seventh, as you like to call him, Stetson Bennett at Georgia. I mean, both walk-ons. So I don't know, man. I'm not a big fan of that. As far as the Georgia players get in trouble, what Ra Thomas did was way more serious than the speeding stuff. Although I do think, and you and I both have been to Athens many times, that is not a place to drag race. There's hills, there's turns. It's a small, condensed area. Yeah. We just talked about getting out of Athens in traffic on game day on another show earlier this week. Mm-hmm. That's stupidity. What Ra Thomas did is very serious, and it's not the first time, so he probably needs to be punted, in my opinion.
Wouldn't be surprised if he is.
Yeah, and so that's it. Is there something wrong with the culture at Georgia? I don't know. People are gonna sit there and talk about all this stuff, and then unfortunately they have a 41% graduation rate. But when you send that many guys to the NFL early, and if you actually look at Georgia's transfer portal numbers, they lose quite a bit every year. I mean, they're not immune to roster turnover, and in some ways, I think it's guys just going to looking for playing time. But when you have, and I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if I'm wrong, somebody correct me. I think if you leave for the NFL, and even if, you transfer, that impacts your graduation rate. I think that's the case. So that number is probably a little bit skewed, but anyway, good to be here. Excited that we're only 1 month away from week 1. That's it's going to fly by, Mike. So looking forward to chatting with JBoy later too. He's a good dude.
Yeah, his background. He's got some coaching in his background, including his family. Very boned up on Auburn, which obviously has been a major storyline here of late. With you start flipping an Alabama recruit, that'll make some national headlines. And Auburn and Tennessee, that they've kind of stolen the news cycle in terms of recruiting in the SEC the last couple weeks with some success, but you know how that goes. Well, that it could be somebody else's headline week next week. And who knows with attrition and everything else. The bottom line is the stakes have never been higher in terms of what kids are getting in recruiting, and obviously, and this goes back to your point on roster spots. We have a fun segment here, which I really like, and we'll see if we can get to it today as well, because Group 5 John gave us some more material, top 5 quarterbacks in Group 5. I really think the biggest detriment going to 105 is that if you're like a Southern Miss, you simply can't afford 20 extra scholarships. You can't afford 5 extra scholarships in all likelihood. If you're a lot of these Group 5 teams, I mean, you're going to be further distanced from the Power 4, and that's clearly what's happening. And nobody really cares. The people that are running the sport, I mean, they don't care. The people that are fans of those schools and the coaches and the people on staff, they obviously care, and they know how it could be a detriment to them. But that's just not where we are in college football. They just don't. They're not worried about if you're not in the Power 4, brother. You're really on another island, as I like to say. Group 5 is the new FCS.
Southern Miss is a particularly sad story. Unlike your Johnny come latelys like App State and Liberty and Coastal and those schools that, basically gave away their championship pedigree to go try to chase the Camellia Bowl. Southern Miss has been in Division 1A for a long, long time, going back to Brett Favre. I mean, they're not some FCS program. They have a double-decker stadium that seats 46,000. They call it the Rock. Historically, Mike, for a long, long time, and it's not that way now, they were better than Mississippi State as far as winning games. And their fans in that part of Mississippi really don't like those other schools. What's going to happen? and they've gone from like Conference USA, and they didn't get to the Americans, so they kind of stumble. Finally they're in the Sun Belt, which I think makes a little bit of sense for them, and they've not been that good probably since Larry Fedora left. And so if you're Southern Miss, and money is an issue there. So what's going to happen now with Ole Miss, Mississippi State having those extra scholarships? All of your top in-state players you would get kind of by default because they wanted to stay in state. They, maybe it's they got the Mississippi and Mississippi State are going to take a chance on those guys now, and they're going to say, "Come on, we got room." And so it's going to eat into your ability to attract talent as well. And then if you don't have as many, the less players you have, the less of a chance you're going to hit on those players. Recruiting in many ways is like playing the odds when you're gambling on sports. It's people talk about 3 stars, 4 stars, 5 stars. It's not that those guys are automatically as good or not. The NFL draft tells us that. It's that there is a higher percentage chance. You have better odds with 5, 4 stars. 3 stars, there's a bunch of them. And then, Southern Miss is kind of at the 2-star level. So, so anytime you shrink your numbers, what does that tell you? It's math. You're going to have a lower percentage chance of finding the difference makers you need to compete.
No doubt about it. I always used to get into because look, you are as well versed in the overall, the macro of recruiting as anybody out there. I know you don't do it for a living like you used to at ESPN.com, but you still understand the fabric of recruiting classes and evaluation and everything else. And some people are just so anti-recruiting that they would love to, call up shows like my old show and say, "Hey, well, I'll tell you what, Mike, recruiting's worthless. I can give you a list of 2-star guys that made it big, and I can give you a list of 5-star guys that failed." And they'd start rattling off names. And I'd say, you know what? That's really good. And I said, now let's be honest. I want you to give me an honest answer to this. If I gave you, if you were the head coach and I gave you the choice of a recruiting class every year that has 25 5-stars or 25 2-stars, knowing the inexact science that it is, which one are you taking? And if you say the 25 2-stars, you're lying or you're just flat out stupid. So we know that now more than ever, the evaluation process is better. I think I went over a list a few weeks ago on the show about Elite 11 quarterbacks, and the majority of them are now starting in the majority of starters in the NFL at quarterback are former Elite 11 guys. Are there the occasional dark horse guys? Absolutely. You know, the Dak Prescotts of the world, for example, who wound up being a not highly recruited kid out of Mississippi, who wound up being a fourth-round draft pick of the Cowboys, who's probably going to be making over $60 million a year in a short amount of time, because that's where the quarterback market is in the NFL. It's, I mean, you're seeing seeing guys like Tua and Jordan Love making $55 million a year. It's just it's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Dak is one that I'm not going to say is overpaid, because I've read his, we know his story from about 10 years ago with his mother. And he's been through a bunch, man. So
he's a great young man, but you remember he wasn't he wasn't a 5-star, 4-star, right?
No. He and the running back, was it Jonathan Williams that they had that year? They were ranked number 1. They're both Louisiana kids.
Oh, Louisiana,
LSU,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, they were Louisiana kids that LSU passed on. And Mississippi State, Dan Mullen. That's the thing. That's the issue I have with Florida fans when they got rid of Dan Mullen. He can't recruit. He can find players, dude. I mean, so anyway, that's a different subject. But yeah, it's getting better. And I think, I've come to terms with it, because a lot of times fans, when they get a 3-star commit now, they like crap on him. And I'm like, dude, that's so bad.
Right.
Because you don't like, yeah, that's a higher percentage if you got a 4 or 5-star that he's going to ball out, but you don't know that this kid's not going to ball out. Give him a chance. And I think that's very negative. And I think some of the social media stuff impacts players psychologically when fans who basically are idiots. Those are idiots that trash incoming recruits before they even, see them play or see how they develop or anything. Against all facts, they'll sit there and bash them. I mean, they're idiots, okay? But idiots sometimes can get in your head, especially in the world we live in now, especially with young people. So I would just encourage everybody, take the individuals as they come. If you want to complain about the recruiting efforts or losing guys at your school, and obviously this doesn't apply to Auburn now, but it maybe did a couple of years ago, that's fine. Those are coaches. That's program stuff. But leave the players out of it, because you just don't know. I mean, 3-star, So, I mean, because some do. It's just a lower percentage because there's more of them. There's 1,000 3-stars. I'll say this one more thing about stars, and we'll move on if we want to. There's one rule that I would follow. Because the industry, right around the time we started 24/7, it just wasn't feasible to give 2 stars anymore, because people just go nuts. So all the Power 5s, basically, even your group of 5s are low 3 stars, and a lot of times there's not that many 2 stars. If you find a 2-star with a Power 5 offer, he's probably better than 75% of the glutton of 3 stars that are out there, because there's something about that kid that somebody that knows what they're doing likes. And I've seen that a lot. I've seen guys that for some reason are the rare 2 stars. And all of a sudden they get an SEC offer or even any kind of Power 5 offer, and they end up being so much better. I mean, they're like, there's a reason, is what I'm saying. Auburn had a guy like that a couple of years ago. He ended up starting. He was a 2, and then he ended up going to Auburn and ended up playing really well. So anyway, just wanted to point that out.
You mentioned Stetson Bennett. I'll throw one other Georgia guy before we go to break. Ladd McConkey, who's now going to be his first-round pick, and I'm going to take a stab here and say he's going to catch a lot of balls with the Chargers this year. How many stars were beside Ladd McConkey's name? I mean, Jordan. Yeah, he was. They don't like to call him a walk-on, but technically he wasn't a walk-on. But he was. I mean, he basically just. There's a lot of people that could have had Ladd McConkey. Let's put it that way. and he obviously turned out to be a pretty good player at Georgia. So it's not like they're just nothing but 5 stars at these teams that are winning. Big stakes. Speaking of big stakes, for all of your financial needs, I'm going to tell you a name of a guy and a company and a number that could help some folks really down the road with their financial portfolio. MG&A Wealth is the company. They've been privately owned since 1984. So not just kind of your run-of-the-mill store that you're used to hearing about that have 100 locations throughout whatever part of the country. There's only one MG&A Wealth. And they started in 84. They've got clients in over 35 states, and they do an outstanding job. Sometimes it's hard to know where to turn to, but call my man Sean at 954-289-9000. That's 954-289-9000. Go to the website, mgawealth.com. They will take terrific care of you and your financial portfolio for you and your family. We're going to see if Jacob Crain can take care of us with some college football conversation on the other side of this timeout. It's JC and Morgan.
Hey, folks, want to tell you about our friends at Titan Construction Group really quick. They're a mid-Atlantic-based general contractor, specializes in retail, restaurant, and office construction. TCG strives to separate itself from other general contractors by adding value every step of the process. From project budgeting to estimation, value engineering to construction, they focus on those relationships and not the transaction. Titan builds partnerships one project at a time. Among their clients are Starbucks, Crumble Cookie, Blake Pizza, Home Goods, 15 plus years experience, based in Midlothian, Virginia, and contracted in Virginia, West Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. So get on their website, TitanCGinc.com. That's TitanCGinc.com. Get in touch with Brad if you're in need of a general contractor that focuses on going above and beyond for their clients. That's Titan Construction Group, a proud sponsor of the JC and Morgan podcast.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. SitePro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. SitePro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call SitePro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit SiteProRentals.com.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right. Right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable, because this movement is just beginning.
Here's JC and Morgan.
This is JC and Morgan. We welcome you back. JC and Morgan presented by SitePro Rentals. When renting equipment, important to have local, easy to do business with friends in the industry who carry the newest equipment and create efficiency for you and your project job site. If you want to work with these type of folks, and I know you do, better to work with the folks at SitePro Rentals. That's better equipment rental. Call our friends at SitePro, 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669. You can check out the website and see all the different things that they offer, too, in the way of rentals. They've got anything you can possibly imagine, and it's properly priced. And, again, good people to work with in general. That's 972 Rent now. Site Pro. We'll be joined in mere moments by JBoy Jacob Crain. In fact, there he is. I know he's got the wife's got a doctor's appointment, or you have a doctor's appointment.
Well, look, it's our 17-week baby visit, so hopefully it's her. I've already done my job, and just excited, man. It's our first kid. It's a girl. I just hope it looks like her, Mike.
Yeah. Well, first off, congrats. Your connection's coming through a little grainy, so I'm just wondering if.
Let me come out and come back in real quick.
Yeah, come out, come back in. I caught most of that. JB's about. Excuse me, JB. I got a JB, I got a Jamie, and I got a JBoy, and I got a Jacob. Jacob, aka JBoy, will join us just a second. I knew when he was about to get married,
Mike.
And we got a JC. Yeah,
You just dropped that. You just left that out.
Well, that's a given. I mean, your name is on the show after all. I think people know that. They don't know perhaps all the other J's and Jakes and JC's and JB's, but here he is again, hopefully with a better connection. There you go. You sound much better now.
Good, man. I'm excited, man. It's been a while.
It's been too long. I used to come on your show back in the day, and then you were in Atlanta for a while. Now you're in Nashville. And tell everybody that doesn't know, because I know people have followed you on social media, and they've seen you on your clips on various sources, whether it's YouTube, what have you. But tell everybody out there about the show that you've been doing in Nashville for about, I don't know, a year or so.
Yeah, man. Well, it's to be honest with you, I still think I'm in a coma. I've only really been doing sports media for about 4 years. I hope I don't wake up, especially now. But yeah, man, started out just as the JBoy show. Ended up starting an LLC during COVID. I was coaching up in Montana. Got reached out to by Colin Cowherd's people at the Volume. Did a 6-month deal with them. Did really well. We were renegotiating with them for a longer deal, and then got hit up by Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire. They want to do a sports show that, believe it or not, is non-political, and we really don't get political other than men and women's sports, which we made a movie about. But yeah, man, I mean, look, it's an old school sports show. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Daily Wire as well, man. We got about 150,000 subs on YouTube, and it's been amazing. We talk everything, but look, we know football is where the bread is buttered and all that stuff. So we take live calls, and David Cohn played quarterback at Michigan. He's not the former pitcher. It's like he said he'd never pitched for the Mets. And then my brother played with Austin Eckler at Western Colorado, played wide receiver. So it's basically just like the JBoy show. It's like every show we've done, we just talk a little bit more about the other sports. But, man, it's been amazing. And, I loved Atlanta, living in Marietta right there. But Nashville, man, Nashville's my spot.
No, I get it. And you had a nice setup in Atlanta. I remember sitting in on your show there, and that was a sweet little ensemble that they put together for you. But obviously, you moved on to bigger and better things. And I tell this all the time when young people that want to get in the business. I don't point to the people at the top of the food chain, so to speak. I point at people like you that get your grind on. Right. Like, as you said, you've only been doing this a few years. You have a background in coaching. There's not a specific roadmap on how to make it in this business, especially now with the new forms of media. But I know from knowing you from years ago, you've always just kind of been busting it, doing whatever you can to kind of break through. So it's the kind of story that I'm happy to see. So congratulations on your success there.
Well, Mike, I do want to say this too. I wouldn't be in this position if guys like you didn't take a chance on me early and were willing to come on my show. JC, you as well. You're one of the first guests I had on the old JBoy show, man. So, we're definitely going to get you guys back on this fall. I mean, we're cranking up, rocking and rolling. We may end up doing a tour and a bunch of cool stuff, but I wouldn't be in this position if guys like you that have a big platform that have made it to the top didn't give me a shot early. So I'll forever be grateful for that. And look, I just want to win, man. I want to put a product out there. We say win the water cooler on our show. I only know 4 things, and they all start with F. So I'm just trying to give as much information as possible.
Well, we'll keep on the football one for the sake of the family audience on this one. Biggest off-season takeaways for you? What have you guys been focusing on? I mean, we just had media days. Obviously, SEC is right in all of our wheelhouse, even though we cover it nationally as well. But what are some of the things you've been covering the most, discussing the most on your show?
Well, I mean, you guys know this. There's more changes happening this year in college football and really college sports in general than any time we've ever had before. The headlines are plentiful. I think the thing that I don't know if enough people are talking about, because we have so much changing with conference realignment, the expanded playoff. I mean, heck, it feels like the rules change every single year, is the amount of parity I think we have at the top of college football this year. Not just in the Southeastern Conference, but in general. And that's not just an offshoot of the playoff. You know, it seems like the past, I mean, heck, really decade going into the year, we felt like there's three, maybe if we're lucky, four teams that have a chance to win a national championship. I mean, I'm counting five teams right now I think could win the Southeastern Conference, with Georgia, Texas, Ole Miss, Alabama, and Missouri. And then you throw in Oregon in the Big Ten. I think Iowa's actually going to be interesting. Utah, to me, I don't think enough people are talking about coming out of the Big 12. So I do believe this year we have more teams that could win a national championship, not just get to the dance, not be like Notre Dame back in the day where they'd play Alabama and then get shoved in a locker in front of everybody in the high school, but could actually win the national championship, which to me, as a lover of college football, that's what I want, right? I want college football to be good on the West Coast. I want it to be good on the East Coast. I want it to be good in the Northeast. I want it to be good in the Southeast. So I'm just looking around and there's so many fascinating storylines about teams that could win it. And that's not even counting the teams that could be sneaky this year.
We've had, the Josh Pates, Barrett Sallees of the world on the show, and I love those guys, and I love their passion for the sport. We just have a fundamental disagreement. They are very much kind of anti-playoff expansion. They think it's going to damage the regular season, damage conference championship games. I mean, I could see the concern of the SEC championship game, for example, although I don't think you're going to convince kids in that game to lay down or coaches to lay down. There's too much pride in that event. I see this as an absolute win. I see games in November that people wouldn't have cared about before because they already picked up that second, third loss, and they're completely out of the playoff hopes, and now all of a sudden they're still in it. I see a playoff that everybody is going to be hanging on every game, and I don't think it damages the regular season. I just don't. So for me, this is one of the most exciting college football seasons we've had in recent memory, but I know not everybody shares that opinion.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, I agree with you. Now, I do wish they'd have expanded it to 8, which gives us room to go to 12, because once they see the money that comes in on the 12-team playoff, I mean, heck, we can't even be happy with 68 teams in NCAA tournament, let alone what we're going to get in college football. And once you go to 16, which they will end up going to 16, whether that's 12 to 16 or 14 to 16, I'm worried they're going to, not that it's going to take away the significance of the regular season, but we're going to go back to an 11-game regular season schedule like it used to be, because we keep hearing this argument for player safety. And I'm all for player safety, but you can't on one hand say we're going to make you play more games in the postseason and also make you play more games in the regular season in that 12-game schedule. So I wish it would have started at 8 so it could have gone to 12. But Mike, I'm with you. And it's not just on the back end, it's on the front end as well. Now, if you're a team that's sitting there and you're 9-2 and you're Tennessee and you're playing Kentucky that last game of the year, which in reality you may be playing for a New Year's Six bowl or like a New Year's Day bowl. Now you still have a chance to be able to not only make it to the conference championship game if that's there, but backdoor your way in the playoff. But then you look in the front end. Now a loss early in the season doesn't kill you the way it used to kill you, right? If you look at like Miami and Florida, let's say Florida wins that game. Well, if Miami runs through and wins the ACC, they automatically get in. Even if you drop 2 games early, you still have a chance to make the playoffs. So not only do I think it's going to make it more fascinating on the back end, I think it's going to make it more fascinating on the front end. And we're going to start having conversations that, we may have talked about who's that 5th team that could be the 4th team that could get in, or back in the old days of the BCS arguing who should be in and who shouldn't. I mean, we're going to be talking about the bubble now. The only thing is we got to come up with a term for the last 4 because we can't call it Final Four. We're still in the lab at Crain & Company trying to cook something up.
Yeah, you get dinged if you start using that trademark tag, which of course the NCAA owns. They don't own college football, thank goodness. Let's go back to the SEC. You mentioned you think that there are a handful of teams that can win this thing. Kind of give me a breakdown on why you think each of those teams has a legitimate shot at it. I certainly think I can think of 3 that I feel really good about, right? I can think of Georgia, Texas, and Alabama. I want to buy stock in Ole Miss. I'm not quite there yet. And I think Missouri takes a step back defensively with all they lost and their coordinator. But give me a little breakdown on what you like about those teams.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you laid out the obvious ones, right? I mean, even
Mhm.
with a new coach in Kalen DeBoer, there's a legitimate, roster still there at Alabama. They have a young offensive line that re-added Caden Proctor that I think is going to be better. And they finally, and talking to Coach DeBoer down at the Senior Bowl, they're going to tailor this system to Jalen Milroe's strengths, which, once Alabama did that last year, they really took off. And instead of trying to treat him like he was Drew Brees or a true pocket passer, they started moving him around. But I'll tell you, Mike, Ole Miss to me is fascinating. The one nervous, kind of anxious thing I have about Ole Miss is they haven't had to deal with these type of expectations before. And they're legitimate expectations. Because again, what has Ole Miss been in the past? They've been a one-trick pony. Now, last year they were better defensively. They were number 1 in the SEC in turnover margin. They were top 3 in the SEC in backfield disruption rate, which is a humongous stat because it affects everything, the pass game, the run game. And they've done nothing but supplement that defense, and especially that front 7, where now they're as balanced of a team as I can remember Lane Kiffin has ever had. They're as balanced of a team I can remember that Ole Miss has ever had, and they have depth, right? You don't win games with your first 22. You win them with your first 66. College football season is a battle of attrition, and their schedule lines up really, really well with being able to have a legit shot to go 11-1. You get Georgia at home. You avoid a lot of the landmines. You got a returning quarterback that I trust, an offensive line with a lot of experience. I mean, you added Juice Wells to what is already a really good wide receiving core. So I'm buying Ole Miss. It's just, can they handle legitimate high expectations? We haven't seen that yet. Then I look at Missouri. Look, I don't think you're wrong. I don't. The defense will take a little bit of a step back. They did add some pieces I like through the transfer portal, especially at pass rusher. But I look at them bringing back Brady Cook. I look at them bringing back Luther Burden. They've still got more weapons on the outside, and their schedule is one of the lightest in the SEC. So
Yeah.
they're going to have to catch some breaks. You typically always do, and I would put Missouri at that 5th spot. But I'm telling you, man, Georgia, it's obvious. Bama, it's obvious. Texas, it's obvious, but they haven't had to navigate the waters of an SEC schedule, even though they don't have the toughest one. I would rank it. I would probably go Georgia 1. I would go Texas 2, Bama 3, Ole Miss 4, Missouri 5.
JC?
Miss and
Mike,
Missouri
here we
in
go.
the top. And the amazing, we're talking about Ole Miss and Missouri in the top 5.
It's nuts, right? It's nuts, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's going to be a pretty good year. Also, Ole Miss may get Micah Davis. He was a really good player. His dad's Dexter Davis, played at Clemson, Utah State, which is a disaster right now as a program. This kid got
I hate it for Blake, too. I coached against Blake when I was at South, when he was at Arkansas State. Man, that's just a wild deal.
It really sucks for him because he is a good guy. It's been through a lot, as a human being. So working with Daily Wire, Daily Wire, right? Daily Caller was Tucker. So that's good. And glad to see those guys do get into sports, and the sports and politics do cross. But I've listened to your show; it's not political and all that good stuff. So certainly on that note, wanted to kind of wish you the best and congratulations on your success. I think that's a heck of a
thanks, JC.
Just from it's a profitable company. They got resources standpoint. No, I know all about it. For those of you that want to get mad at me, I also know all about the Atlantic and the New Yorker. If people want to plug me, I read everything and form my own opinion.
That's good. I wish everybody did that.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. So, I wanted to ask you about Auburn specifically. I know you got some Auburn connections. I think this year, if they can get to 7 wins, 8 wins against that schedule, it's pretty good. Not ever really been sold on their quarterback, but man, oh man, what's going on the Plains from a recruiting standpoint? You flip 2 guys from Bama. You're on. This is as on fire as I've seen Auburn recruiting since like early Gus, or the one year Will Muschamp came in at the end for like a minute, and they signed all those guys in a flurry. This has to be something from their standpoint that just as an off-season note that's extremely positive.
We lost Jake's mic.
I think you muted. Yeah.
You're muted, Jake. I don't know how that happened.
You muted yourself, Jake.
Yeah.
Sometimes that
All
happens
right, we'll get
him
Jake back
in.
up.
My bad. My question there.
Oh, the question was good. I think we're
Yeah, 'cause-
hanging on the answer because Auburn to me is one of the mystery teams this year. I have no feel for what Auburn is going to look like this year. I know one thing. They brought in Tyrone Nix, who I happen to know fairly well. His family is a friend of my wife. And Tyrone's got the offensive coordinator designation. And that was a big coup because he's a very valuable part of Ole Miss football and their staffs for a couple of decades. But Hugh's going to be calling plays again. So, I mean, basically, Auburn Nation said, look, Hugh, we love everything else you bring to the table, but part of the reason why you were such a valuable asset is we want you to call plays. So you got Florida fans that want Billy Napier to stop calling plays, and you got Auburn fans that are like, Hugh, you need to be calling plays. So they went ahead and they jettisoned off OC last year. That was a one and done. And then they went ahead and basically convinced you. I think Hugh Freeze, quite frankly, wanted to do it. When you're a lifetime play caller, and then all of a sudden you're sitting there on the sidelines and you're not calling plays, you just feel like a fish out of water. So I think it was obvious that he wanted to get back to that.
Yeah.
He wanted to get back to being in his comfort zone and doing his strength. And if you're an elite play caller, you should be calling plays, even in today's day and age where everybody just delegates authority and responsibility to all your assistants. So Hugh Freeze will be calling plays. But I think, JC, I mean, Auburn to me is just it's a big mystery. I have no feel. Nobody likes their quarterback, including Auburn fans. We know they've got talent on both sides of the ball, but do they have as much talent as the elite teams we're talking about?
Well, when I don't know. I mean, they did a lot in the portal, and a lot of guys maybe don't have the hype that came in from the portal, but they have a chance to be really good. I'll say this, and they have a freshman receiver that's going to be really, really good, and a good running back. With Thorne, Hugh stuck with him. There was some talk that, they didn't pony up for a quarterback, and I don't know that I believe that. I think I call it the Bo Wallace effect. Nobody liked Bo Wallace. I was doing recruiting at the time. Oh my God, they took Bo Wallace out of junior college. Oh Lord. Oh my God, Bo Wallace. Bo Wallace started for 3 years and set records, and he stuck with him. Now he'll throw a backup in there in a heartbeat. That's how he runs offense, But he stuck with Bo Wallace, and it paid off. So maybe that's the case here with Auburn. Their schedule's very streaky: 5 straight road games and 3 on the road. What's up, Jake?
Hey, man. Hopefully that's a little better. But no,
Bristol.
JC, to answer your question, I think all of Auburn's aligned right now, which, that rarely happens. But when it does, that's when they've had success. You look at the fans, the administration, obviously the donors, the players, the coaches. And look, the last piece of the puzzle, and I'll continue to say this, is that the on-the-field success has to follow this year. Because they've been telling these recruits, look, we're going to figure it out. We're going to figure it out. I mean, I think 8-4 is very doable. I think 9-3 is possible when you look at the home schedule. But you pretty much got to start out 5-0, and that includes a win over Oklahoma week 5 at home. I don't see them winning 2 out of the 4 road games at Bama, at Georgia, at Missouri, and at Kentucky. If you win one of those 4 and you hold serve at home, or even you go 7-1 at home, that's at least 8-4. But it's not just who they're getting; it's where they're getting them from. I'm from the state of Alabama, from Auburn. We typically don't go down to Mobile and have a ton of success, let alone going down there and flipping guys that Alabama actually wants, like Perry Thompson last year, are flipping guys that Georgia wants, like DeMarcus Riddick. So they're winning battles they haven't won in a while. And on the line of scrimmage, they're winning battles they haven't won in a while. And just being able to recruit from the top of the state to the bottom of the state, if they can show some on-the-field progress, I think you're going to see it continue. This staff obviously knows what they're doing.
Yeah, last time they were really good in Mobile, and Michael McNeil didn't really pan out for them. It was right before, I think, class of 07. So it was right before Saban got everybody, that next cycle. Chiswick and Gus and those guys, they had a really good staff, and Chiswick could recruit, and a lot of that group kind of set the table for 2010. But yeah, Alabama's owned Mobile recently, and that's
and JC Birmingham too. You know this.
Oh, yeah.
Alabama runs Birmingham, and Auburn's getting. I mean, they got like 7 out of the top 10 players in the state right now, and 4 of them are from Birmingham.
There's got to be a feeling. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying Mobile, Birmingham, and believe it or not, Northern Alabama, Huntsville area. Those are your talent pockets in that state. Now, I will say this about Alabama: you can get a player from anywhere. I mean, there's players all over that state.
Yeah.
But that's where you really hit the sweet spot. There's so many. That's that I-10 corridor, man. That's why
for sure
any school located along I-10, they have no excuse. But that's so impressive. And I think you mentioned the alignment. That word is not – culture's overused. I think alignment is underused when you're talking about evaluating football programs, don't you think?
That's exactly right.
Well, the word that's been apropos for Auburn has been disarray, right? Because, I mean, with lack of alignment, and there's certainly been plenty of that on the Plains, there comes disarray. And it's surrounded Gus Malzahn the entire time he was there. The Brian Harsin hire, that was a head-scratcher, clearly did not work.
Yeah.
They landed on Hugh Freeze, which I have to think they're going to give him time to turn this thing around. And the other thing I was going to say is that this is no knock on Kalen DeBoer. I mean, I think Kalen DeBoer is a home run hire, and he may or may not do great things in Tuscaloosa. But the bottom line is there's only one GOAT. There's only one Nick Saban. And so if you're an Auburn fan or if you're that Auburn administration, I have to feel like you think to yourself, at least the window is cracked a little bit more now that we got that guy out of the way, and maybe we can start making up some more ground here.
Yeah, well, I kind of feel like, and I guess Auburn feels like Luke Skywalker when he was able to fit that shot through the Death Star and it blew up. That's kind of the way it feels. Because, look, I mean, Nick Saban, regardless if you're an Auburn fan, you're an Alabama fan, or you're a Titans fan, you know that he's the GOAT. And I give kudos to Kalen DeBoer for having the guts to follow Nick Saban in Alabama. There's a saying in coaching, you never want to be the guy that follows the guy. You always want to be the guy that follows the guy that followed the guy. So, yeah, I mean, anytime you have that changing of the guard with the emperor of college football, it does crack the door. Now, the question becomes, Mike, and you have a kind of a small window to do it, you got to be able to step through the door. And this is the year that Auburn needs to show that, hey, not only are we back to relevance, but we're back to closer to even, with Alabama's program than they have been in a long time, because it has not been close to even since Saban took over, really.
Was there any regret about letting Gus go, or was the feeling just, he's taking it as far as he can take it?
Well, to me, it's like the situation where you want to get divorced, but you want the kids to get through high school first. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like it's kind of like that. Like the spark was gone. Gus really didn't evolve. That's why I think he's had success at UCF, is because he's evolved not only as a play caller, but as a person. I mean, the guy wrote a book on the hurry up, no huddle, and then slowed down every year he was at Auburn. So, again, I think it was, almost like Bo Nix. Sometimes it's good to just part ways, man. It's like they say on the other guys, you got to be Febreze brothers. You need a fresh start.
Yeah, no doubt. We talked about the elite or the tier 1, maybe even tier 2 of the SEC. How about some surprise teams? Anybody you like that's maybe not getting a whole lot of love right now?
Well, I think Texas A&M is really interesting. I think Mike Elko's a great fit there. They do have some talent. If Wegman can stay healthy, he doesn't play a sexy brand of football, but it works. He throws the check down. He makes good decisions. He throws the ball away. He gets them in the right play. I think they got a really good shot to beat Notre Dame week 1. And then if you look at that schedule, I would not be shocked at all if A&M was able to find 9 wins. Another team to me, and it's so weird we're talking about LSU, being so bad on defense. As much as they lost on offense, as far as growth potential as a team, as far as balance as a team, I think LSU has a chance to kind of elevate. And, I like Nussmeier. I talked to him at SEC Media Days. They're going to have weapons on the outside, even though they lost Brian Thomas and Malik Neighbors. But I look at that offensive line, man. I don't know how they can be as bad as they've been on defense with Blake Baker as the DC there now. I think he's going to try and simplify it for Harold Perkins. But as far as growth potential, I think A&M and LSU are really interesting.
What about the so-called bottom third, if you will? I almost put Vanderbilt in a class of its own, but Kentucky fans want to know if Stoops can get back to where he was. He had those 2 10-win seasons in a 4-year span. South Carolina fans want to know, is this the breakthrough year maybe for Shane Beamer? Do they get back to 2 years ago where they had the landmark wins against Tennessee and Clemson back-to-back? Is there going to be progress for Florida with Billy Napier on the hottest of seats and then Sam Pittman, whose seat might be just as hot, if not hotter, in Fayetteville? Give some optimism, if you can see any, for those particular teams.
Well, I mean, for Arkansas, you just released Arkansas Nuggets from Tyson, which I think are going to be pretty good. But outside of that, I don't have a lot of confidence in what's going on there with Sam Pittman. I think he's going to be the first SEC coach that gets let go, unfortunately, this year. And, I love Coach Pittman. He's been great to us. As far as South Carolina, I like Lenoris Sellers. I like Nicholas Harbor. But, man, I like Spencer Rattler and I like Xavier Legette. If you don't get better up front, none of that is going to matter. And I think Lenoris has a chance to be really, really special. But, when I look at this South Carolina team, you're going to have to prove it to me on the line of scrimmage, on offense and on defense. Until that gets fixed, I don't care what system you run. I don't care what level of ball you play. It's not going to matter. Now, as far as Florida, I don't think Florida is a bad football team. I think there's a common misconception out there that, they're not very talented. They may have the best D-line in the SEC. Graham Mertz showed us last year that he can actually be a dude. Eugene Wilson's a guy that I got a lot of confidence in. So I think it's more of Florida's schedule than it is they're just a bad football team. I mean, look, Mississippi State's roster isn't good enough right now. We'll find out about South Carolina up front. Vanderbilt's in the conference, so we can say we care about math and language arts and all that stuff. So, outside of that there's not a ton of optimism.
I know you got to go here soon, but just some other big picture stuff you're looking for as we're, again, less than 30 days from week 0, 30 days from week 1, or 31, depending on your math. Again, I didn't go to Vanderbilt, so I'm not good at that.
Me either.
Just some other things that you're looking forward to and you might be talking about with the gang on Crain and Company here in the coming weeks.
Well, again, looking around the country, I think there's some teams that when you match their schedule with how they've upgraded their personnel, I think they have a chance to make some noise. I think Nebraska is fascinating to me. When you look at their schedule, there's a chance they could start 6-0 or 7-0. Obviously, you look at Colorado, people are going to glaze them and gas them up. I just don't believe it because I don't think they're that good up front. But, man, you're looking at the Big Ten. I'm so interested to see how well Oregon fits in there. And, guys, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I think Iowa may be decent offensively this year, which if they're decent offensively, there's a chance they could backdoor their way into the playoff as well because McNamara is a pretty good player. He's just got to stay healthy. And you got to be honest, you can't get much worse than what they've been on offense. So around the country, from coast to coast, from border to border, it's going to be a fun year in college football, guys. I appreciate y'all having me.
No doubt. Jake, thank you again for joining us. Congrats on the success of the show. And most importantly, congrats on the news. Did not know that until you said it on the program that you're about to be a dad. That's awesome.
I am, man. I'm super excited. It's shaping up to be a heck of a year, but going to get you guys on Crain and Company soon, and I appreciate you having me.
We'll do it. Maybe we'll join you in that plush studio in Nashville. He's got a nice setup. For those that haven't figured this out yet, JC's in Chicago. I'm in Atlanta, so we're kind of all over the map. Our producers in Greenville, and our guests are wherever they are. But when they do their show, they're actually all on site in a studio in Nashville, Tennessee, which there's worse places to do a show from. JC, as you well know, as somebody who's lived in Nashville, among the many other cities you lived in. All right, we'll take a final timeout. The JC5, the morale of a great nation, as I like to say, depends heavily on what JC has cooked up for the JC5. So let's all clear our minds, clear our thoughts, and get ready for some good karma, some good mojo, some good everything. JC and Morgan rolls on after this. Mike here for our friends at MG&A Wealth. It's never a bad time to have someone on your side for all your financial needs. You need a trustworthy partner who has a true understanding of your situation in order to help you with smart and practical solutions. Since 1984, MG&A Wealth has helped their clients manage not just their wealth, but their lives. Today, as a nationally recognized wealth management firm, their team of pros remains dedicated to serving your best interests with an emphasis on personal attention and customized solutions. MG&A Wealth has clients all across the country, and they all get results. Don't put it off any longer. Call our friends at MG&A Wealth at 954-289-9000. That's 954-289-9000. MGAwealth.com is the website. They do more than manage wealth. They help manage lives.
Listen up. This is for construction professionals, contractors, facility managers, or do-it-yourself homeowners. SitePro Rentals is ready to equip your upcoming project. We rent construction equipment for any size job. Boom and scissor lifts, telehandlers, skid steers, excavators, air compressors, generators, even small tools and equipment. SitePro has you covered. If you are ready for better equipment rental, call SitePro and rent from the local, friendly, easy to do business with equipment professionals. Call 972-RENT-NOW. That's 972-736-8669 to rent the newest equipment in the Atlanta market. Call 972-RENT-NOW or visit siteprorentals.com.
We're passionate about making sure that the Nest and Wild mattress is the best it can be. Made well and made right. Right here in Tupelo, Mississippi. So how can we do all that? Work. Hard work. And that means something. The Nest and Wild mattress is a movement. It's a pride in where you come from and where you're going. So get comfortable. Because this movement is just beginning.
Here's JC and Morgan.
All right, it is time. Our thanks again to JBoy Jacob Crain of Crain & Company for joining us, talking some college football. That's what we do each and every week on this show. By the way, the website is what I would say under repair. It's still working, but it's going to get a heck of a lot better and a little more interactive. It's still jcandmorgan.com. We welcome you to check it out, but it's getting a facelift, much like so many things that we've been able to do on this show to help it look and sound a little bit better as we continue to grow by leaps and bounds. But jcandmorgan.com is the website. We're on every platform imaginable. YouTube audience has been very strong here of late. Again, you don't have to watch. You don't have to look at our faces if you listen to us on YouTube. I think that's the misconception. I get a lot of people that are just fixated on Spotify and iTunes and Google Play. And like, yeah, I just like listening in my car or when I'm at the gym and I don't really watch. So that's fine. You can still put on YouTube and just not look at us. In fact, some would say that'd be a better way to do things because who wants to look at us?
We love YouTube. Also, the Chief Sports app. If you're in your car and you don't, some people don't like to play YouTube in their car because it some people's phone, it heats it up.
I don't have that problem. Now I have a Droid.
My iPhone's never heated up. Some people it does happen. So if you don't want that to happen, there's an easy way to do this because you can catch the stream, the YouTube style stream on the Chief Sports app. It's free to download. We got a lot of different teams now that are represented on the Chief Sports app, with more to come. We've got probably some additional content nationally that you guys are going to like here pretty soon. It's growing and part of the Chief Sports Network. So be sure to do that. Also follow us on X/Twitter at JC and Morgan. I think we're on Instagram at JC and Morgan, Facebook, JC and Morgan Pod. We gotta fix the logo because it's really more of a show and a podcast now. So
yeah,
I've been looking at the graphics. We got to fix the logo. We need a new intro. I've got all kinds, besides the website, I got all kinds of maintenance on the show I got to do, but it looks great. Thanks to Phil. I mean, as far as the production and stuff goes,
yes,
I've got some updating to do before we get really into the season.
Well, let's go with our already updated JC5. Maestro, take it away. Is the Maestro there?
It's time for the top topics in the sport. We bring the JC5. Number 1.
All right, number 1. All right, so they settled this lawsuit. The details come out. Very sneaky kind of I don't want to say underhanded, but kind of it's not going to set well kind of move. It's just going to cause more litigation and stuff. So with this house settlement, the revenue share thing, that's what the house is. They included a clause that said, oh, by the way, all NIL deals now have to go through a third-party verification system to where if it's over $600, you have to have experts, which I think experts these days there's a lot to be desired for most of them in all subjects. Will sit there and determine whether this is market value or not. And so what it's going to do is going to eliminate some of these big checks the collectives have been writing. So, Mike, I have my opinions on this, and I'm kind of mixed in a lot of ways. But your thoughts on that as far as something to kind of even the playing field? And there's going to be penalties. You can get on probation or fined if you violate this. If you're a school, so it's up to the schools to kind of police it. Your thoughts on making sure that NIL is actual NIL?
Well, look, for those that have been with us for their duration, I've been saying this for years. NIL was never going to be true NIL. It was never going to be true demand. There's a lot of what I would call artificial demand baked in to these price tags that these kids are commanding and in very many cases getting. These businesses that are so-called profit, the idea is that you profit on your name, image, and likeness deal that you have with a student athlete. That's not what's going on here. You're buying players. I knew this would happen. It's absolutely happened, and coaches now will tell you what's going on. I've had multiple coaches at a practice setup situation without a microphone in their face say, Mike, what's going on now is everybody's quote-unquote buying players. So I don't know how you're going to prove a market infraction. In other words, well, we gave this kid $500,000 to sign posters at a local car dealership, but really that's not worth $500,000. Well, based on who? Is there going to be like a marketing expert for the NCAA that's going to come into your town and starts crunching numbers? And they can't even figure out what to do with Michigan after clearly there were violations there, cheating, and they already let them play for the national championship game, and now they're going to penalize future kids for something like they're incapable of doing this. So I don't know really what it equates to, JC. I think the cat's out of the bag. The NIL is still just going to be whatever you want to pay kids to come to your school and stay at your school. And all the other stuff, name, image, likeness, that's a cute, fancy term, but that's not being applied in its truest form.
Yeah, I still maintain they did it to themselves. If they'd have just used some common sense instead of clinging to this amateurism model like they did and trying to fight these lawsuits, if they'd have just given them the damn $500 that they made off the game, I mean, that game
they should have
was the
done that.
stupidest thing. Yeah,
that was
like,
yeah.
Oh, that's really that $500 is really. Oh, he's not an amateur anymore. Yeah. And I think this was kind of a backdoor. All the reporting about this settlement, Mike, it never included anything like this. This is kind of the NCAA, I think, still clinging to things. It's never going to work. Capitalism's capitalism. If someone wants to give you $1 million for tweeting about their business, it may be worth $1 million to them. And no third party can really market value is based on the market. Technically. Now, do we know why they're getting that much? Absolutely, we know that. I mean, what you just said's accurate. But I just don't know how, and especially with experts. And these days, you have people that claim to be experts that are clearing houses for various things, especially in media. You got these truth and media people. They're basically left-leaning, liberals that don't like any kind of opposing viewpoints, and they'll sit there and call it inaccurate and try to get your advertisers to you can probably ask JBoy and his company about that. You have people in the medical profession that put politics over science. You have all kinds of these experts that get quoted on a daily basis, including in sports, that aren't worth a crap. Okay, so you're telling me you're going to bring these people to the table to limit income for these players, outside income that has nothing to do with, technically has nothing to do with the school, and that you're going to make the schools police it and put them on probation if they don't? That's a pile of crap. And in the chat box, Steven says, will this lead to more lawsuits? Absolutely it will. You're going to have the Title IX people coming from one side and the NIL people coming from another, and it's never going to. And so the settlement is going to be a pile of crap at the end of the day, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate the NCAA can't just say it is what it is. Let's go. Let's settle this. You get revenue share, you get NIL. Have at it. It's kind of sad. All right, ready for number 2.
Number 2.
Number 2. All right.
Did we lose you?
I don't know.
We got 4 more to go.
Mad Dog's had a busy morning, so I get it. So, number 2 is, who, Mike? You asked JBoy about this a little bit. Your most underhyped SEC team that could be quite good.
I'm going to say Kentucky. It just seems to me that the things that were really wrong with Kentucky, they've been addressed. That doesn't make them a great team automatically. They still have question marks. We don't know exactly what Vandergriff is going to look like at quarterback. We know that he's a 5-star. We know that he's got some skills, but there's no tape. There's virtually no tape on him. So we don't know what we don't know. But what we do know is that the offensive line is better. They've addressed the coordinator position, I think, for the better. They've got 2 potentially game-breaking wide receivers that if they just stop dropping passes, which they've been right near the nation's leading teams in dropped balls, that you would imagine improves, much like it did at LSU a few years ago, where, believe it or not, guys like Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase were leading the nation in drop passes. LSU fixed that. They hired some new coaches. They addressed it, and all of a sudden, those guys became first-round draft picks and NFL studs. Defensively, they have an all-conference player at every level. They have a mountain of a man in the middle at defensive tackle who will be a first-round pick. They have a transfer from Georgia who's an all-conference player, and Dumas Johnson at linebacker, and they have a cornerback that's an all-conference player. I feel like if there's one team to use your scenario that could really, because where's Kentucky? 13th in the projections, 12th or 13th. Not that means a whole lot, but clearly not many people are high on Kentucky this year. So I would say Kentucky maybe has the most room to pull off a shocker, if you will.
Yeah, they've got their schedule formula like they normally do, but it's not an easy September for them. Southern Miss at home, the aforementioned Golden Eagles. South Carolina comes in the next week. They've won 2 in a row in that series. Georgia comes in for a prime time game on ABC in Lexington the following weekend. Ohio University, Frank Solich is not walking through that door. And then they end September with at Ole Miss. So now it gets a little lighter later. Vanderbilt, Florida, Auburn comes to Lexington, at Tennessee. I don't know if that's lighter or not. They have a road game at Texas. They do play the Murray State Racers. Typical Kentucky scheduling strategy there. And they got Louisville again, which I think Louisville's due against them. I mean, Mark Stoops sort of owns Louisville right now, but I think you get, if they can somehow, they got to beat South Carolina, Southern Miss, and Ohio and be 3-2 going into their open date. And then I think they can put some things together. It is a challenging schedule full of teams that frankly expect to beat Kentucky. Tennessee has owned them. Auburn expects to win that one. Florida at some point believes, I think, they can beat Kentucky again. Texas. But it's one where I agree with you about the talent, especially on defense. when you got that guy, when Dumas Johnson came, that was a big get, man, because he wasn't a guy that left Georgia looking for playing time. He was a starter at Georgia. I don't know why he left, but he's a starter. And Vandergriff, I think people are gonna like the way he kind of runs the ball. I do think there's some question at running back. But if their offensive line is good and they can throw it with those talented guys on the outside, I think they can be quite good. All right,
Deion Walker. Look, I know we don't get overly excited about defensive tackles, but Deion Walker is a beast. He is every bit of 6'6", 340 something, and can move. He is going to be a first-round draft pick. He is going to be a guy that's just a flat-out problem for everybody that tries to run between the tackles this year against Kentucky. And so, if again, I think their defense was awful last year. It was just awful. They could not defend the pass to save their life. Yeah. They didn't get much of a pass rush. Those two are kind of hand in hand with one another. So now the obvious answer to your question, I mean, if you put A&M eligible, then I would agree with Jake that they had, if you just went on pure talent, they have the best. But I was trying to pick a team from the bottom third.
I got you. Yeah.
So that's why I went Kentucky. But A&M certainly could be a team that racks up a lot of wins this year if you just base it on talent. And if Wegman can stay upright, then they should be able to be more successful.
I'm still on the Tennessee train. That's my answer. Tennessee.
On the who?
I think the Tennessee train. I think.
Well, but they're projected to win a lot of games, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
they're kind of middle of the pack. Like we talked to Brad Crawford on another show the other day. He's like, nobody said a word about the Vols at SEC Media Days this year. And I think if they can get past NC State in week 2 in Charlotte, I think it sets up nicely for them.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. If we're going to include they're an upper half team in my eyes. So I mean, you can go to Vegas and get pretty decent odds on betting Tennessee to make the playoff. Nobody's betting on Kentucky to make the playoff. Tennessee with Nico and maybe the best pass rusher in the league, or certainly one of them. Tennessee should be good this year. So I would agree with that. And I think A&M should be good this year. But I'm looking at that bottom third, and I'm thinking, is this going to be the year that Kentucky – and by the way, if it isn't, Kentucky fans are like any other fan base. They've got long memories. It wasn't that long ago Mark Stoops was clearly flirting with Texas A&M for that job. I don't think that sits well with a fan base coming off a less than stellar year.
3.
All right, number 3. Okay, so – guess what, Mike? We're going to make history again this year, most likely, because you don't know what the bracket's going to really look like right now. But most likely, we're going to make some history this year. College football's postseason has never, ever, in our lifetimes or previous lifetimes, been cold weather. NFL, yes. College football, no. So my question for you is, for the first time in the history of this sport, will the elements play a factor in the first round of the playoffs? For example, Notre Dame does not get to go to the quarters because they're not in a conference. And that's fair because they don't play a conference championship game. Some team from the South going to South Bend in like December 19th. I live near there. It's cold, dude. It's really, really cold. And these guys from the Sun Belt part of the country, even California, they're not used to playing in that weather. So my question to you is, do you think we will see weather play a factor for the first time in the history of the college football postseason?
Odds are yes, because if it's not Notre Dame, it's somebody from the Big Ten, right? I mean, it's a Michigan, for example. Everybody thinks Ohio State's going to win that league this year. But it's a Penn State. Gets pretty cold. It gets pretty cold in Happy Valley that time of year. Maybe it is in Iowa, to go back to what Jake was saying. So yeah, I think it's a statistical probability that we are going to see at least one cold weather playoff game. And you know what? I'm here for it.
To me, like, pro football has always been, like, when we get the playoffs, always has been a cold weather sport. because I grew up. I mean, even like the Redskins when they were the Commanders now, when they were good back in the day. I remember watching games in D.C. in January where it's snowing. You have a lot of teams in colder climates. So pro football to me is it's football, cold football weather. I started thinking about college, man, with the exception of some Big Ten games late in November or whatever, where you have the elements. The Big Ten's always sitting there champion to sunny Pasadena, California in the Rose Bowl. I mean, the bowls are all kind of in warm weather spots. We had a championship game in Indy, but that's inside. So, we have a bowl game in Detroit, but that's also inside. Bowl game in Detroit. Wow. Anyway, but that's, I think that's very fascinating because that first week into December can be cold in the Midwest and upper Midwest and Northeast. But by the time you get to the 19th, I mean, the temperatures have dropped. The average temperature in Chicago, for example, in November is about 43. In December, it's like 28. So think about that for a minute.
All for it. Number four. There it is.
Okay, so speaking of cold weather schools, so was it Herb Street? I'll ask you this. Herb Street, I think it was Herb Street, came up with a sleeper playoff team. They said Rutgers.
No.
Buying or selling the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Look at their schedule. Greg Schiano. I know in college basketball, you look at the NBA draft projections for next year, Rutgers has 2 lottery picks on their roster. But in football, I think Schiano's done okay his second time there. But, you look at their schedule. I mean, they open with Howard and Akron and then have an off day. And then, they get Washington at home, at Nebraska. They go to Southern Cal, but it's not an unmanageable schedule. So are you buying or selling Rutgers as a sleeper for perhaps making a run to a playoff berth?
Yeah, I'm going to sell that one, Herbie. There's just so many other dark horse teams that I could see from both those leagues, the SEC and the Big Ten. I don't think we're going to have more than one team from the Big 12. And I really wonder if we're going to have more than one from the ACC. But if we do, that even diminishes the chances of a team like Rutgers getting in. So I think, I have all the respect in the world for Schiano as a college football coach. Never thought he fit well in the NFL with the Bucs, but I don't think they're there yet. So I'm gonna sell on that one.
Number 5.
Are you buying the Nebraska hype? Yes or no?
I'm buying the Nebraska hype more than I am Rutgers. I'm buying the Matt Rule hype. Matt Rule took the Panthers job, and that's been a train wreck up there in the Queen City of Charlotte. Matt Rule was an easy whipping boy for that fan base, but I don't think Matt Rule forgot how to coach. And you look at where he's been and what he's done in the college ranks. I think I've said this before. If Matt Rule can't do it, I'm just convinced Nebraska is unfixable. They can be better, but they're never going to be really good. And I gave up on elite, 1990s Nebraska that you and I know, 3 titles in 4 years. I don't think that's coming back down the pike. But there's no reason Nebraska can't be good again. And I think Matt Rule's the guy for the job. And, they went all out, forked over a lot of cash to get a quarterback that certainly, Georgia, not that Georgia needs one, but that Georgia really wanted and had. They've always had the facilities. They've always had the support. They've always had the fan base. They continually sell out games, despite the fact there hasn't been a lot to cheer about. So yeah, I'm bullish on Nebraska. That with limits, it's not going to be Nebraska it's not Tom Osborne, Nebraska. But do I think that they could be a dark horse team in the Big Ten? Absolutely. I think they will start playing better football in Lincoln, and it all starts with Matt Rule, who I still think can coach.
I'm going 7-5. one of the worst offenses in the country again. And I think
this is all about the coordinator.
I think they're going to win. I think they're going to start 6-1 with some real ugly games. I think the Illini will go out there and cut them on a Friday night. Brett Bielema is due for a rebound season. Purdue lost its coach, so they're terrible. They'll win that one. I think they'll beat Rutgers at home and win at Indiana. Then the losses. Then there's going to be a hyped game in Columbus. They're going to get slaughtered. They're going to maybe score 3 points. They'll beat UCLA because UCLA is in worse shape than they are. They'll go at SC. They won't be able to score. Wisconsin, they won't be able to score. Iowa, they won't be able to score. They may get shut out in that one, and they'll finish 7-5 after a big start. And it breaks my heart to say it because I love their fans. I love the program. College football is better when Nebraska's back, but there is one thing holding them back, and we will talk about this later this season. I'm not going to talk about it now, but there's one thing big time holding them back. And with a freshman, keep in mind this guy's a freshman. He's a true freshman quarterback. I don't care if his dad's a coach. I don't care how hyped he was. He is still a true freshman, and I have seen this up close and personal what that coordinator will do. Now, he's not coaching quarterbacks anymore, but he's still trying to run that offense. And the beatings will continue until the offensive plan improves out in Lincoln. And it was bad last year. And don't be fooled. Just because the personnel's better doesn't mean it will be good again. That's my opinion, and I'm sticking to it. And hey, if they win 9 and have a good offense, I'll eat my hat. And I'll be happy for Nebraska people.
You're going to eat a hat?
Pretty good JC5 there.
That's a locked and loaded JC5. Let me real quickly get to the Group 5, John 5. He's got the top 5 quarterbacks in Group 5 this year. JC, you can apply how many stars each of these guys had. I'm guessing not a whole lot. Jacob Zeno of UAB, a record setter last year, 3,100 yards, 20 touchdowns. Blazers have a brand new stadium, by the way, in downtown Birmingham. Pretty nice compared to the old dump that was Legion Field, where you just didn't want to be. Jordan McLeod of Texas State. You know what the bigger story, by the way, he was the Sun Belt Conference Player of the Year last year, 3,600 yards, 35 touchdowns, 10 picks. But what's the bigger story there, JC? When you're talking about Texas State, you're talking about
G.J. Kinney.
That's right. You're talking about their coach, who I'd be shocked if he's not on the top of a number of coaching boards for Power 5 teams soon.
Yeah, McLeod was at James Madison last year, I think.
That's right. Transfer from JMU. But G.J. Kinney he's just a stud. Runs an exciting brand of offense. Young guy, making a lot of noise early on. Keep that name in mind. Number 3, App State, always a dangerous team that nobody wants to face. Joey Aguilar, 6'3", 220, the first quarterback on this list to account for over 4,000 total yards of offense. He was Sun Belt Newcomer of the Year last year. He threw for 3,700, 33 touchdowns, and ran for the rest. So look for Joey Aguilar to make some more noise in Boone, North Carolina. Beautiful city for those that have never been. Great place to catch a football game, I would add. Number 2, Byram Brown of the USF Bulls. They were a surprise story last year, and so was Byram Brown, one of 2 quarterbacks to throw for 3,000 and rush for 800. You know who the other one was? He just happened to win a Heisman Trophy. Jaden Daniels was the other guy that did that. And then number 1, remember this name because this is a team that a lot of people, including our guest a week ago, Phil Steele, has making the playoff. Seth Hennigan of Memphis, 6'3", 210. He's passed for over 10,700 yards in his career. Last year, he threw for 3,800, 32 touchdowns, only 9 picks. They are favored, they being Memphis, to win the AAC. Remember last year, the AAC champion was SMU, who has gone from the AAC to the ACC. Confusing? Nah, not at all. So Seth Hennigan, remember that name as potentially the top quarterback in Group 5. As always, we thank the input from our boy Group 5 John. Also want to thank Nest and Wild Mattress, nestandwild.com, the most comfortable mattress on the market delivered to your door. I speak from experience. I sleep on it every night. It's a difference maker. It's a game changer, and not nearly as much as those inflatable beds or Tempur-Pedic bed, all these little gimmicks that they just add thousands of dollars to the price. Not as comfortable as the mattress from Nest and Wild. locally owned and operated out of Tupelo, Mississippi. Give Brandon a call. The owner actually answers the phone of a national company. It's pretty cool. He'll take your order, 662-610-1882. That's Nest and Wild Mattress. JC, before we sign off, some final thoughts perhaps here on JC and Morgan episode number 248.
Yeah, just looking at App State's schedule, man. It's a little bit tough. I mean, you got ETSU comes in for the opener. They should win that one. At Clemson for a night game at Clemson, the rare night game at Memorial Stadium. At East Carolina, which, is always going to be tough. South Alabama comes in. Major Applewhite taking the controls there. Liberty comes in after that. Then at Marshall, at Louisiana. So that's kind of the Mountaineers have a challenging opening schedule this year, and certainly glad we talked about them because it gave me an excuse to kind of look at the Sun Belt a little bit.
Yeah,
Aguilar,
Sun Belt, Fun Belt.
Yeah, and I think Brown from USF. Keep an eye on him. They got Tennessee's offensive coordinator, Golish. They run that
Russian
same system, so there's a chance to put up big numbers there.
No doubt. By the way, week 0, don't sleep on SMU, Nevada. I think a lot of people will be watching that game. It's not just all about Florida State, Georgia Tech. I think there's become a fascination with SMU football, how they got into a Power 4 league, how the money that they're spending. I think people root for SMU because most people feel like they got a raw deal. They're the only school in the history of the sport to get the quote-unquote death penalty, which clearly buried that program for decades. That'll give them a chance to get a nice national stage in week 0, which will be here before you know it. We'll be back with you before you know it next week. I want to thank again Jacob Crain, JBoy, for joining us on the guest line here on JC and Morgan. Our producer again, Mad Dog Phil Mullinax. For JC, it's Mike saying so long. We'll see you next week on JC and Morgan.